Hello, my name is Sharwin and I'm from Chemical Engineering Semester 4. Today I would like to talk to you about my project, which is to save electricity. My team comprises of 2 CE members and 2 ME members. Now let me tell you a bit of the background of the project. Taylor's University electricity bill comes up to at least 500k a month, and 20% of it is just for the lights. Now the funny thing is 10% of this money that is spent on just lights alone in terms of bills has been seen to have been wasted, meaning that lights are turned on while no one is around. Now for example, let's look at this picture. You can see the lights being turned on in the corridors although there's no one there. So it's safe to say that the lights are turned on absolutely for no use at all. So now what is the objective of our project? The objective is to use the application of motion sensors as well as UV sensors to detect the presence of people within a certain confinement or classroom in order to avoid electricity wastage. If we can do that, now we are avoiding 10% of the electricity bill because 20% of it is used on lights and 10% is being wasted. Onto initiating phase. Let's talk about the stakeholders. Since earlier we've been talking about how the stakeholders has been Taylor's University. That's right, the same Taylor's University you and I both study in. Now let's move on to priority analysis. Schedule phase. Our product should be completed by 11th of July 2016, which is before the engineering fair. Now the consequences if we don't do that is that we'll have no product to display during the engineering fair, and hence we will have no marks awarded to us during the. Now let's move on to the scope. We develop a system to control lights by detecting the motion within that room and by identifying the brightness during daytime within a determined range. By analyzing the number of people inside the room, whether there are people or not, we want to decide whether or not the light should be on or should be off. What are the consequences if we can't give this with our system is that stakeholders will now lose trust with us because we're not giving them what they want and we can't save them any money at all. Now let's move on to budget. Our product should be lesser than RM 70 ringgit and it should save up at least to 120k a year. Now if we can't do that, the consequences are that stakeholders will find it harder to break even meaning that to get back the money that they've used up in this system. By saving money, they would want to make up money back that they've put into apply the system. Now moving on to quality. Maintenance has to be done regularly to maintain the quality that our system offers. And consequences if we can't do that is that, like a car, if maintenance is not done regularly, the quality of the car will drop, the car will get spoiled, and people will lose trust within the quality of that company itself. Now let's move on to planning. In planning, we're going to talk about the concept of this project, which is, for one, to turn on lights only when people are inside and to turn off lights when people are not. Secondly, to turn on lights based on the number of people that are inside there. It should just be sufficient for the number of people inside there. For example, if there are 2 people within the classroom, inside the classroom, then lights should be turned on just for them and not the entire classroom's lights should be turned on just for the sake of 2 people. Lastly, lights that are placed outdoors should only be turned on when it's dark and when there's someone around, and not in any case any other scenarios. Now let's take a look at the work breakdown structure. The work breakdown structure of this project has 4 deliverables, which are to detect motion, detect sunlight intensity, to produce a product cover, as well as to assemble the product. Now each deliverable has their very own task, and each task are distributed evenly among all team members. Now let's move on to the sensors that have been chosen in this project. For one, we have taken the PIR motion sensor, and another one which is the UV detector, which can differentiate between artificial light as well as sunlight. Now in every project there will be causes to why work gets interrupted. For us, it's basically because this project is mainly EE based, electrical engineering based, and we have no one of that from that field, so which is why we are lacking in the knowledge in terms of production, and which is why our program code does not function at times. And another case which is present with all groups, I can say safely, is that teammates sometimes are unable to make it for certain discussions or certain lab sessions. Now let's move on to risk management. Risk management planning. We will consult with supervisor when working with high voltage to avoid any accidents, and we will research more on the assembly of the product itself so that our product looks nice for consumer products sake. Now let's move on to risk identification. In order to identify what are the risk that lies ahead before progressing any further in the project, we included techniques such as brainstorming. We inquired from the supervisor regarding what risk lies ahead, and we carried out our very own research to find out for ourselves. Now let's talk about risk analysis. There are high possibility of the risk happening if we do not consult our supervisor, and the circuit will also be spoiled because we are not EE based students, as well as it can also spoil when it's not well taken care of. Now the last part, which is risk response planning. In order to respond towards the risk that we already found out about, we interviewed with the supervisor as well again, and also to do our own research about how to tackle this risk. By doing this, the risk has minimized, fortunately. Touch wood to that. Now, for the sake of executing, team members were very willing to work with each other, and very little slacking took place. Of course, slacking took place, but very little of it. Arguments were frequently done in a very professional manner whenever there were clash of ideas or someone disputed on something. The team was always made sure that all the members were on the same wavelength so that the teamwork was more efficient in that way. Now, about meetings. We only have meetings when there's something necessary or something major to be discussed. And each meeting is focused on one point so that it's more efficient, and each meeting is very concise and short so that it's very focused towards the topic and is very efficient. Now let's move on to controlling and monitoring. There were two people involved in monitoring the team, which were the team leader as well as the supervisor or the module coordinator. In order to help monitor the track of our progress, milestones were created to help aid the progress of the team, and a Gantt chart was also referred to often so that to know how we stand week in, week out. Now, every project runs late, but here are a few reasons why our project ran late. Because the buffer period was not included in project planning, the lag time was not included, the slacking time rather was not included. And also, our team, I will admit, are sole believers last minute work, and due to some mishap, remodification of the entire project needed to take place. So here's a summary review of the project. It is a noble cause simply because it saves electricity, and once it saves electricity, it then saves a lot of money. And once you say it saves a lot of money, people will then be all automatically triggered about how much of money you can save. They would want it, hence creating a high business value for this product. So we can safely say that if our product works out, it will be very successful. Now let's move on to the project deliverables of this project. As mentioned earlier, the project deliverables are to detect motion, to detect intensity of light, to build a cover for a product, and lastly to assemble the product. And in terms of my role, what have I done for this project? I observed the electricity usage used in tailors and to gather billing information, as well as to estimate business value of this project, and to prepare compartment needed for the assembly of the product, and lastly to keep track of the team's progress by preparing. The teamwork, in my opinion, was very cooperative. At times they were willing to sacrifice certain occasions just for the sake of the progress of the project. However, the team was often misled by the messages sent by the supervisor and did things that were not important. And in terms of not important, there were at times needless arguments that were not necessarily involved in the discussion of the project at all. So with all those being said, we can see that how electricity is an important part of our lives. So let's all together save electricity. Thank you.